Okay, I'm just having some problems right now because something is going on with my live screen right now. But I hope I get some people in there. Ooh, I hope I could get you all in there, but there's some things I'm going to have to do. Okay, successfully connected. All right. Give me a second, y'all. I just hope y'all could come on in. But I just wanted to just come and share with y'all this afternoon about this disastrous state of the Democrat Party, and I am so glad I am using my gift of discernment and gifts to see so much through what they've been doing. They are messy as I don't know what. They don't know how to do this thing in the right way for the American people. And this is what I don't like about them. I just watched some things how they boosting up all these votes for Kamala. I'm right here in Delaware, okay? And there's nothing like that going on here, okay? There's nothing like that going on here. It's a lie. I'm right here with she in the state of Delaware. This fake phone call that Joe's supposed to be watching them and also speaking to the public on a phone call. Nobody saw Joe. Some kind of tweet or whatever letter they sent of him dropping out of the race. And this is what right now Ted Cruz is addressing this disastrous state of for the Democrats. Right now, comments are turned off, so you really can't make any comments on this at this time. But there's a reason, so it won't be no, all this craziness or whatever. This was done 23 hours ago, so actually this was done yesterday when he made this. And I don't think a lot of people really know about that, the fact that Ted Cruz did address this. And the Democrats are lying. They are cheating. They are stealing from the people. And don't think that what they're doing is right. They are stealing. And they try to accuse Trump of stealing and being dishonest and doing all of this criminal stuff, which they are doing. And now Ted is, I mean, not now, he's not, online live or whatever, but this was 23 hours ago. So I guess it's out there for the public to know about this, because every people are just not listening. They caught up and they pumped up and they going crazy over this Kamala stuff. But people got to pay attention to really what's happening right now in America and what's going on with right now this election. They did not do this fairly. Some people even wrote in the chat. Remember the movie Godfather? They said, oh, they took Fredo out on a fishing trip, meaning that we don't know what's going on with Biden right now. But this, all of a sudden, Kamala's campaigning around acting president, acting president or whatever, and all of this fake, crazy stuff going on. So the real people that were really sincere and loyal to the Democrat Party and feeling that they honest with them, this is something you need to take notice of. But anyway, let me play the video so everybody can hear it.
Was going to be on the ballot. The night of the debate, I said it is inevitable. Joe Biden will withdraw. The party will force him off. And I said it'll take about 3 weeks for that to happen. Well, yesterday that came to fruition. Today, It appears the Democrats are going to nominate a candidate who has been voted for by nobody, whom no Democrat has voted in a primary for she or he to be their president. That was their plan. Although I would note, had the debate not occurred, I don't know if this would be happening right now. None of the Democrats seem concerned that Joe Biden lacks the mental capacity to be commander-in-chief. None of the Democrats seem concerned that he lacks the mental capacity to even know what's going on around him. None of the Democrats seem to be concerned that he quite literally has his finger on the button and the ability to fire nuclear ICBMs and eliminate mankind from the face of the planet. I dearly hope he doesn't think that button is for ordering pizza. The White House said a few weeks ago he's very alert and on his game between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And so let us hope China and Russia and North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba and all of our enemies confine their hostilities to the hours between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. For the Democrats, his lack of ability to perform the job of commander-in-chief, that was not disqualifying. They would happily have stayed with him, except the debate happened. And the debate happened. Anyone who watched the debate, it was obvious that Joe Biden lacked the mental capabilities to keep going on. You could no longer deny it to the American people. Anyone who's ever had an elderly relative going through the challenges of dementia or Alzheimer's, if you have a relative and you've seen it, you know exactly what it is. And every person watching that debate knew exactly what is going on. Now listen, all of us are on the path of old age. But some people get there more rapidly than others. So where are we now? Less than 24 hours after the announcement, it appears the Democrats are circling around Kamala Harris. At this point, I believe it is extremely likely Kamala Harris will be the Democrat nominee. My initial prediction of Michelle Obama, it appears, one must infer, she's decided she doesn't want it, which I noted at the time was the one thing that could save us from a Michelle Obama presidency, is if she decided she didn't want it. We now have Kamala as the sitting vice president. She's been endorsed by Joe Biden, at least via tweet. He has not spoken to the American people. She's been endorsed by Bill and Hillary Clinton. She's been frantically endorsed by potential opponents. People like Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, people like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. As we begin to see the auditioning go on for who's going to be her VP nominee.
You see, I like the way he's bringing this to the public's attention, to know who you're voting for. This is not right for the American people, that these people just feel like they just going to step out of order and do what they feel they're going to do just so that they can win the election. And if you're listening, listen closely to what he's trying to bring to public attention of the American people, the voters out there. You can't just be voting for people and feel they have the right to be in a position without having to go through a certain chain of command. And these people just doing what the heck they want to do out of order. Out of order with the United States government. The government is out of order. So the people are being led astray. Okay? So listen very closely.
As they desperately circle around. Understand this was the plan. The Democrat Party is cynical, but they're also savvy. There is a reason they did this right after the Republican convention. I was in Milwaukee for the Republican convention. I've never seen as strong a convention in my life. I've never seen the Republican Party as unified as we are right now, unified behind re-electing Donald Trump, winning a Republican majority in the Senate, winning a Republican majority in the House. And the Democrats timed this announcement to try to counteract any bounce that comes out of the convention, and to hope that the media spends the next month singing the hosannas of Kamala Harris and whatever very boring white guy she picks as her VP. And sadly, the Democrats are such bean card counting parties that is exactly what she's looking for, is give me Wonder Bread. That will be the VP nominee. She's counting on billions of dollars of free media from the press recreating her. Well, today we're here to make clear 100% of the Joe Biden record is Kamala Harris's. Kamala Harris was named the quote-unquote border czar of the last 4 years. As the border czar, that's Joe Biden's term, not mine, she bears direct responsibility for the chaos at our southern border. Now, mind you, as border czar, it must be nice to have a job that requires you to work fewer hours than Joe Biden. Joe Biden only works 10 to 4, if he's awake then. Kamala Harris, in 4 years as border czar, has been to our southern border precisely once. And the one time she went to El Paso, where they cleaned it up so she saw no illegal immigrants. And the entire time, the Rio Grande Valley in Texas has been the epicenter of the invasion we've been seeing in this country. She's been to the Rio Grande Valley as vice president a total of 0 times. Eagle Pass has seen a massive invasion. She's been to Eagle Pass as vice president a total of 0 times. Del Rio. I was down in Del Rio. Del Rio is a town of about 30,000 people on the Texas-Mexico border. I was down there when in a single day, more than 10,000 Haitian illegal immigrants were crossing in one day. Over a third of the population of the city invading in a single day. You know who wasn't there? Kamala Harris, the border czar. Because border czar means she ignores the issue, she doesn't understand the issue, and ultimately, she's complicit in facilitating the invasion. And I want to tell you who also bears full responsibility for the disastrous policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and his name is Colin Allred. Colin Allred is running against me for the United States Senate. Colin Allred is an extremely liberal Democrat incumbent congressman from Dallas. Colin Allred, his first 4 years in Congress, voted 100% with Nancy Pelosi. There was quite literally not a single vote he disagreed with her on. It would have been identical, by the way, had Colin Allred showed up the day he was elected, pulled out his voting card, slapped it on the table on Nancy's desk and said, "Nancy, here's my voting card, you take care of this. Whatever San Francisco wants, that's what Texas wants too." The results would have been identical had he done that. When it comes to the border, Colin Allred...
I see 3 people in the chat. I'm not in. I see 3 people, I'm sorry, in watching and here. Could you please hit the like button? This is very important for you to know and to hear what's going on right now with the Democrat disastrous they're doing disastrously, and people got to pay attention. Don't get the colorblind out of your eyes. Listen very closely. Get the prejudice out of your heart. Listen very closely, because this is important to the American people, and especially to you out there who are voting, casting votes in to put this woman in power.
Red has over and over and over again voted in favor of open borders. Now, recently, he's decided he needs some PR. So, number one, he counts on the corporate media to describe him using the following word cloud: moderate.
I want you to like, share, subscribe, please.
Bipartisan centrist who unifies people, just like Nancy Pelosi does. Mind you, he voted identically to her. So unless, as a reporter, you're prepared to make the case to the American people that Nancy Pelosi is a moderate bipartisan centrist, unless you can make that case on the merits, and spoiler alert, you can't. You cannot use those words to describe him because his record is of a radical left-wing Democrat. When it comes to the border, he's voted against H.R. 2, strong legislation that would actually secure the border. He voted no. Now, he's recently begun beating his chest saying, well, I did vote for a resolution saying we have a crisis on the southern border. Truly a profile in courage. 11.5 million people have invaded our country.
Please hit the like button. Those of you that are in the chat, please hit the like button. I appreciate it very much.
Texas is seeing the misery, the death, the suffering of the invasion at our southern border. And so he stands out and says, we have a crisis. And then he turns around and votes no on any tangible, meaningful step to solve the crisis. If you want to understand just how radical Colin Allred's record is on the border, understand that Colin Allred has voted against deporting illegal immigrants who violently assault police officers. Now, I'm going to suggest to you, if you gather 100 Houstonians and just ask them, hey, if there's an illegal immigrant who punches a cop, should you deport them? And almost any Houstonian, almost any Texan would say, of course, that's common sense. Well, not Colin Allred. He voted no. Even if an illegal immigrant assaults a police officer, do not deport him. Now, it's interesting. Colin Allred recently came out with a TV commercial. A TV commercial where there are 254 counties in Texas. He found 2 elected.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you. You're here. I'm so glad to see you. I want to share this with my platform today. This is so important for us to know what's going on right now. Don't sit around and just do nothing. You know, this is important for this election of who's going to be our government, and the moves they're making right now on the Democrat side is not, to me, looking good for the American people. Because like he spoke on the border, that's supposed to be Kamala Harris's job, where she's only been there one time, and they just pushed her in there, and now we are heading for a disaster in America government. She cannot win this election in November, and I just feel that Joe Biden has not came out publicly and spoke to the public of his dropping out of this race for the DNC to be running for another term in presidency, even though we know he cannot do that, not because of age, but because of his right now, him being incapacitated. We don't know what's going on with Joe Biden right now, who is right now our leading man of the United States of America, and we don't think this is right. You know, not that he was doing anything great here, because we got a problem that escalated up until this time, and this has never been done in America before. This is just crazy, you know, because we don't have a president right now. We don't have a president right now, and that's not good. Thank you, Frankie. Yes, I want to know about this because I am not knowing what to do. We all don't know what to do right now. Well, I know what to do because I'm going with the Lord's side, and that's why I'm bringing this to people, because I don't want nobody to be caught out there. We are in danger. Our government is in danger right now, because this is not the way people should be doing things and living over people, protecting this country, protecting the citizens, and everything else. Like they thinking about their own greed, their own power, and it's not right. We want to make sure we put the right people in office. And we, as the citizens of this country, should have that right to know what we're doing. Who are we putting in office here? Who's going to protect our nation? Just can't put somebody there because, oh, they're AKA or she's a female, or, the color of their skin. And blase blase. We have to see, and even what they write in a policy, we got to see how they moving and what they out of order. I'm sorry, the Democrat government is out of order. They're out of order. How they just threw Joe to the fishes and they just went on with their life and do what they want to do to gain that position of power, and especially to these women out here. You out of order. You are out of order. She, first of all, she ain't had no business being, and Joe put her there. And this just shows you how God does not want woman to be the head over the man, because these are the messy moves that they will make. It's dangerous. They're going to destroy the world. It's dangerous.
Democrats in uniforms to say all red is tough on the border. That was the word tough. Very tough. Except for the fact that he consistently votes against any provision to actually secure the border, to actually deport an illegal alien, to actually enforce the law, to actually protect our communities. Other than that, if you want to know what Colin Allred thinks on the border, listen to his own words, where he stood up and said the border wall is racist. That's his term. And he personally would tear the border wall down. Now listen, he's entitled to have those views. Those views are not unusual. That's the same view AOC has. That's the same view Rashida Tlaib has. That's the same view Ilhan Omar has. That's the view of the radical left squad in Congress. It happens also to be the view of Colin Allred. What he's not entitled to do is run away from his record. Now, as the days and weeks and months unfolded up until yesterday when Joe Biden dropped out, do you know what Allred consistently refused to do? Answer the question if Joe Biden should drop out. You had Democrat senators standing up saying Biden needs to drop out. You had scores of Democrat House members saying Biden needs to drop out. You had the media saying Biden needs to drop out. You had George Clooney saying Biden needs to drop out. And yet Colin Allred, when asked, would turn and run because he was unwilling to answer that question. The internet has dubbed a nickname for him of Can't Comment Colin. And I'll just point out, look, all of you are professional reporters. I'm curious how many of you have had an interview with Colin Allred? How many of you has he been willing? I got one. That is good. But for the entire campaign, he's been unwilling to answer questions, even basic questions. He's running a basement strategy where he hides. But now with Kamala Harris, we have a moment of clarity. Now we sit here. Lots and lots of Democrats have endorsed Kamala Harris. You know who hasn't? Colin Allred. You know who may well not? Colin Allred. Why? Because he's unlikely to answer a reporter's question. He did, however, send out a fundraising email where he says, give money to me and we need to support Kamala. So maybe that's an endorsement. I don't want to overstate. He's at least willing to take money from people who support Kamala. And that is one thing that the Allred campaign is good at, is raising money from radical left Democrats all over the country. They're printing money. From radical left Democrats who despise Texas and who want to turn Texas into California. If you want Texas to become California, if you want your next senator to be a Nancy Pelosi clone, you've got an easy choice here. But the consequence of today is very important. The Democrat Party is circling the wagons around Joe Biden's border czar as the next nominee. If Kamala Harris is the nominee, understand what that means. That means every elected Democrat in the House and Senate, their agenda is continuing the Biden-Harris open borders. The border czar will keep this same invasion going. That's Colin Allred's agenda. Not saying he's tough. By the way, you know what Colin Allred also hadn't said anything about? Jocelyn Nungaray, the beautiful 12-year-old little girl here in Houston, kidnapped, violently assaulted, and murdered by two illegal immigrants that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released. He hasn't said anything about Rachel Marin, the beautiful mother of 5, raped and murdered in suburban Maryland by an illegal immigrant Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released. He hasn't said anything about Laken Riley, the beautiful 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia, murdered by an illegal immigrant that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris released. He hasn't said anything about the 15-year-old girl who, thankfully, we don't know her name, she's a minor, in Boston, Massachusetts, who was raped by an illegal immigrant from Haiti that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they didn't just release him, they actually flew him from Haiti to Boston. He was released in Boston and he promptly raped a 15-year-old girl with severe mental disabilities. He was arrested, and in recent days, a liberal judge released him on a $500 bond. These are the policies that Colin Allred supports. These policies are terrible for Texas. They're terrible for the country. What happened yesterday was a deliberate subversion of democracy by the Democrat Party. But it also provides absolute clarity that Colin Allred and every other Democrat on the ballot is campaigning to make Joe Biden's border czar the president of the United States, which means the open borders and the disastrous policies of the Biden-Harris administration.
And Kamala cares about women. Listen to what he shared here. How can someone sit in political power as running as your president of the United States, saying that she is for, again, locking up criminals that rape and abuse and everything else to women? She said this to you. Now, I don't have to go back to my next video when we're talking about pro-life now. Womb assassination and criminals, the criminal system, especially crimes against women. But Kamala Harris was in charge of the czar border, or whatever they call it, to keep illegal immigrants from crossing our borders and coming into the United States of America, hurting our police officers, and doing these things to women. But this is who y'all going to elect, because she's a woman, that you think this is the right person to run our nation. Let's go on.
Continue and would get worse, and that is very, very bad for Texas. With that, I want to recognize Representative Charles Cunningham.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. My name is Charles Cunningham. I am the state representative for District 127 in Northeast Harris County. That encompasses Kingwood, Huffman, Humboldt, and the Spring area. I want to start out by saying to the media, thank you. You know, there's a saying that says, keep living. And soon your steps will get slow, teeth will fall out. Your hair, if it doesn't turn gray, it'll fall out. And I want to say that to the media because you have shown the public what we as Republicans already knew. The president doesn't jog no more up to the podium. The president doesn't ride a bike anymore. And the president doesn't take those steps as fast anymore. But the reality came after the debate. And then his own party said, we've got to act. And so I just want to say thank you, because the president should be the president of all people. Doesn't matter, color, party, of all people. And now I want to switch gears because Senator Cruz has spoke on it. I want to talk about how this affects Texas. Last year, I went down to the border, Eagle Pass, rode there with the National Guard, rode on the boats up and down the river. Thousands of people crossing. I could just reach out on the boat and just high-five them. Thousands of them. That effect on Texas alone put the pressure on our infrastructure, on our hospital systems, on our schools. We couldn't even treat our own people here in Harris County. You know, Harris County, Houston, Texas is about 2 million people. It took over 100 years to get to 2 million. It took 1 year to have 2 million people cross over in the border. And I know y'all fact check me just to make sure. But that is in 1 year. 2 million people crossed over into our border. And they were coming from all over. Russia, China, the Middle East, Africa, and of course, South America. But what really got me was, they were on first-class flights to Mexico and then getting out and coming over to the border. Thank you again, media. I saw several people look like they were still in the airport with their luggage just rolling across to get to our border. Saw several people calling Ubers to take their destination to get to our border. That is all because of the policies that we have today with this current administration. It's the policy of the so-called drug czar, as the senator has so spoken, never went down to the hot spot, but went over to El Paso, where it was all looking nice and clean. And so those policies are going to continue. We already know this. And that's going to put an effect on us here in Texas. The energy policies are going to affect us. That's going to put an effect here on Texas. Now, when Governor Abbott started shipping, flying, however you want to call it, sending people all over the country, because before then, it was just a Texas problem. But once he started doing that, what did New York say? What did Chicago say? I'll tell you what they said. They said, help. So now as we look forward to a great victory in November, I want my fellow Texans to know, Texas needs a true leader. Texas needs someone that's going to look out not only for Texas, but for the country. Senator's already spoken. We have our issues over in Israel. I am an ardent supporter of Israel. We have our issues all over the world. That's the senator's. That's his lane. But we need to make sure that America will continue to be the America, the bright shining star that we have. And so with that, I'm going to step aside, and if you don't want to give it to Cindy Siegel.
Cindy Siegel, the Harris County Republican Party Chairman.
Good morning. Well, they say all politics are local. And like you all, I've been watching over the past almost 4 years what's been going on from Washington, D.C. on down. And we've been told that we're supposed to buy into the fact that Joe Biden had all of his facilities, was the one that was at the helm, who was actually running the country. Just a few weeks ago, after the debate, we were told by the media, well, ignore the photos, ignore the videos. Those were just, those were changed. But we saw very clearly the difference between an elderly man who's incapacitated mentally and an older man who has his facilities. We're not talking age here. There are people that are in their 80s and 90s that are very sharp. We're talking about someone who had the mental capacity to be the most powerful man in the world. And who's driving the bus? You have to ask yourself that question. We've watched his failed policies and how they impact us here locally. We've been told by the Democrat Party that, yeah, you're safer, when in reality, we saw that at the beginning of the year in Houston, we were all of a sudden told that all of those crime statistics, that they weren't closing out the cases, that they were just removing them from the books. We were told that Joe Biden was running the ship, that he was there and engaged, when in reality, what we all saw firsthand was that he didn't have the mental capacity to be the president, and he doesn't today. I've known people, three of my precinct chairs in the last year have lost children, adult children, to fentanyl. I just recently, last week, came back, I had the opportunity to be at the National Convention. And the heartbreak stories of the failed policies of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the exit from Afghanistan, the Gold Star families that Joe Biden won't even mention those soldiers' names. And yet at the debate, Joe Biden said he's never lost any soldiers. So we have the everyday men and women who are moving to the Republican Party because they know that they haven't been told the truth, that they've been lied to. They've been lied to, and the policies of the Democrat Party have failed them. So when you go to the poll, to the independent voters, I'm speaking to you. Do you feel safer? Is your family safer? Are you concerned about what's crossing the border? Are you concerned about your children? As a mother of two daughters, it broke my heart to hear about little Jocelyn. That's the worst nightmare, to lose your child in any way, but to lose them to illegal immigrants who raped and murdered her. I can't even imagine the heartbreak. Do you feel safer? I don't. Do you feel more secure? Is your family secure? I don't think my family's more secure. Do your dollars go further? I don't think our dollars go further. I have a daughter in New York. I see that she's paying almost 50% of her income in taxes and cost of living. It's hard for these kids coming out of school to live and have a decent salary. And they worry about their future. And that's the future that I worry about for not only my daughters, but all of Harris County citizens and possibly future grandchildren. So when you go to vote, I will tell you, do your research. Don't listen to the lies that are being perpetuated by the Democrat Party. The fact is they lied to you about Joe Biden. They lied to you about Kamala Harris being the border czar. They've lied to you about, well, fentanyl isn't that big of a deal. They've lied to you about inflation and the economy. We're here in Harris County Republican Party. We've got great candidates who are running. Senator Cruz, from the top of the ticket to President Trump, J.D. Vance, the senator, and other candidates down to the local candidates. Do your research, and I think once you do your research, I think you'll be voting Republican in November.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Charles. With that, we'll open up to questions.
That's where I'll be voting, because I saw the moves that these Democrats made and the lies they got out here and told the people and everything. I had to share this with you today. I usually don't do this, and I'm usually not involved this deep in politics. But when this inflation started hitting me and my family, I had to turn off all other stuff that I've been doing. Even though my Robert Sylvester Kelly, he's all definitely in my prayers about all of this. But I had to, bring this to your attention, because this is important right now with our government. This is important local and all across the whole United States. Okay? our domestic government and our foreign government. And our government that's just happening all over the United States of America, and even especially with our military right now and our police officers, those who are to protect their citizens. So all of this has a lot, everything, all of this falls in together. You can't have people like this ruling over you, and you can't have people like this you're going to follow. I can't follow the Democrat Party. I just can't. I denounce that party today. As of today, I am no longer a Democrat. I am an independent. I follow Christ and not man. And I don't like these policies they got out here that they lying to you about. People are living it every single day. So the people that are not listening, those are going to be the ones that's going to follow the Democrats to hell. So let me go on.
Senator Cruz, do you plan to investigate President Biden's health over his term, i.e. is the debate just the tip of the iceberg? And a follow-up on that, is Jill Biden, the 21st century Mrs. Woodrow Wilson?
Look, in terms of the first question about whether I plan to investigate it, sadly in the Senate, there will not be any Senate investigations because Chuck Schumer is the majority leader. The Democrats have the gavels. And this Democrat Party has zero interest in investigating any of these issues. In 3.5 years on the Senate Judiciary Committee, you know how many hearings we've had on the chaos at our open border, on 11.5 million illegal immigrants invading this country? Zero. Because when the Democrats are the chairman of the committees, they're not interested in this topic. Let's take just this week. I joined a number of other senators calling on the Senate Judiciary Committee to hold an emergency hearing with the director of the Secret Service and the Secretary of Homeland Security and the director of the FBI as to why there were catastrophic security failures that led to the assassination attempt on President Trump. That assassination attempt came within a half inch of murdering President Trump. The Secret Service had catastrophic failures. I had a briefing last week with the head of the Secret Service. She is stonewalling. She is refusing to answer any questions. There is no accountability whatsoever. She has said she will not resign. I got to say, what does it take to get fired in the Joe Biden administration? She should have been fired that day. By the way, after Afghanistan, after the disastrous debacle in Afghanistan, the failed withdrawal that resulted in 13 servicemen and women being murdered, not a single person was fired. And so will the Senate engage in that oversight? No, I believe the House will. And I believe the American people will. And there is an obvious question. Every Democrat is saying Joe Biden is no longer fit to be a candidate for president. Actually, they're not saying that. They're just saying he's not the candidate anymore. We won't tell you why. Well, the obvious question is, if he is not mentally competent to be a candidate for president, how is he still serving as president of the United States? Are we to hope over the next 5 months that the bad guys will just take a vacation? That there will be no challenges facing America that require a commander-in-chief? Because that's the position of every Democrat. So we should have an investigation and accountability. And as for Jill Biden, listen, I think the Woodrow Wilson analysis and analogy is quite apt. Woodrow Wilson at the end of his presidency was not competent, and his wife, for all intents and purposes, was making the decisions. Candidly, I'm going to give you a really scary answer. So I get asked this all the time, and for 4 years I've been asked this. People all over Texas, they'll ask me, they'll say, Ted, who's really running things? Who's making decisions in the White House? And here's the scariest answer. I don't know. I genuinely have no idea. My assumption is that it's Barack Obama. Barack Obama is the only president in modern times who stayed in Washington, D.C., bought a big home up in Kalorama, their cars there every night. I assume it's Obama pulling the strings through a bunch of apparatchik staffers. But the candid answer is I have no idea. And no other Republican senator does it either. We sit around and ask. I know the effect. I know the outcome. I just don't know the process that produces it. The outcome is on every single policy issue, this White House goes to the radical left. That the people driving the agenda are Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and AOC and the Colin Allreds of the world. It's the radical left. So on border policies, they support open borders. On law and order, they support defunding or abolishing the police. On gender issues, they support sterilization and radical surgeries of minors. Those are extreme positions. On Israel, they undermine Israel and they send $100 billion to Iran. Iran provides 90% of the funding to Hamas and Hezbollah, so they fund our enemies and undermine our allies. This coming week, Prime Minister Netanyahu will be in Washington speaking to a joint session of Congress. Many Democrat congressmen will boycott that speech because the Democrat Party is now fundamentally the most anti-Israel party we have seen in modern times. It will be very interesting to see whether Colin Allred shows up or not. He's going to be conflicted. His instinct is going to be to boycott the speech because, I would point out, if you look at the anti-Semitic protests across the country and college campuses, those are not organic, they are being funded. You notice the tents all match? Millions of dollars have funded those protests. Among the leading funders of those protests are George Soros, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the Pritzker family. Those also happen to be among the leading donors to Joe Biden, and those three in particular have given $80,000 to Colin Allred. Among questions Allred does not answer is, will he give back the $80,000 from the funders for the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic protesters? He won't answer that because he doesn't answer questions. But in terms of who's running it, I don't know if it's Jill Biden or Barack Obama or somebody else. I just know the outcome is an agenda that is deeply harmful to Texas.
Senator, earlier in this campaign, you talked a lot about your bipartisan experience. Today we're hearing a lot of a different message. You know, the Democratic Party is cynical, they're lying to the American people. Does the departure of Joe Biden from this race mean that your campaign is entering a different, more aggressive phase?
No, both are entirely possible. And I will say this is something that many in the media have a hard time understanding. So I've been in the Senate 12 years. The people of Texas have entrusted me with fighting for 30 million Texans for the past 12 years. In that entire time, I've had two principal responsibilities. Number one is to lead the fight against bad policies that hurt Texans. And that's a job I have relished. Whether the bad policies came from Barack Obama or Chuck Schumer or Joe Biden. It's a job I think I'm pretty good at. Leading the fight against horrible policies that hurt Texans, whether it's open borders, whether it's undermining law enforcement, whether it's releasing criminals, whether it's undermining our allies abroad, whether it's supporting anti-American terrorists who hate us. Leading the fight against those policies is something I've been proud to do every day. At the same time, it is also my job to work to pass meaningful pro-jobs, pro-growth legislation that makes a difference for Texans. My top three priorities I could sum up in three words: jobs, freedom, security. My number one priority is jobs, and in my 12 years in the Senate, I have authored and passed 100 different pieces of legislation into law, earning bipartisan support, getting them enacted. I would note, again, the media loves to describe Colin Allred as a bipartisan centrist. In his entire time in Congress, he has passed 3 bills into law. I've authored and passed 100. And so in terms of record, it is entirely possible to do both at the same time. So, for example, one of the most recent bills that I just passed into law was the FAA reauthorization bill. Landmark legislation, $110 billion for aviation in America. Invested in aviation safety, invested billions of dollars in airports in Texas and across the country, directed the FAA to hire the maximum number of air traffic controllers, invested in technology to avoid or lessen the risk of collisions on runways, landing or taking off. It also enhanced competition. We had a major victory for Texas in that bill, which is San Antonio has never had a direct flight to Ronald Reagan DCA National Airport. San Antonio, the entire community of San Antonio desperately wants a direct flight to and from Reagan. 4 or 5 years ago, the city leadership came to me from San Antonio, the mayor, the city council, almost all Democrats, I would note. And they asked, and the business community and local community, they said, can you lead the fight to get this done? I said, absolutely. I made the case San Antonio is the 7th largest city in America. It's frequently called Military City USA. It has an enormous military population, both active duty military and veterans. Reagan Airport is right next to the Pentagon. It's right next to Arlington Memorial Cemetery. I made the case. I drafted the provision of the legislation creating the new slots. It was the single most contentious battle. The Democrats from Maryland and Virginia fought vigorously against it. And at the end of the day, Texas prevailed. The final vote on the floor of the Senate was 88-4, the 4 being the 2 Maryland and 2 Virginia senators. The bill was signed into law.
Please hit the like button as you come on in. Please hit the like button. I really appreciate it. I've been on here now almost 45 minutes or more. I'm not really keeping up with the time, but I really appreciate you coming in today, listening to this very, very important information that I am sharing with you, what's going on right now with the American government and how the Democrats are trying to cheat and lie and bully their way and to stay in power in the United States of America. And it's a lie about our economy because the inflation here is just, oh my God, it's just over my head. I just went inside the store yesterday just to buy some snacks, and oh my God, you wouldn't believe how ridiculous it was for a bag of potato chips, a full, the large bag or whatever, close to $6. Okay, it is just ridiculous the way price of food is today. Is definitely out of control, really out of control. So just to know who you'll be voting for this year is important. Who's running your state, who's running your country, who's running everything that basically citizens need daily throughout the day of our protection, the police department, your local police department, security of our borders, the National Guards or whatever is and who's in our military. So it's just very important to know all these things that we as human beings have to deal with daily, day in and day out. And this is in God's divine order. How God has held me up. I was supposed to be somewhere today, but I didn't make it. I got to do it. I just got to get myself together, and I just every time it's just always something boom hit me, and I get so engaged in it. I just really get engaged in it, and I've been really getting engaged with this for quite some time now, a couple of weeks, and I'm learning so much, so much about politics. And I was going to go into political science, but I didn't. Like I said, I shared with you, I got married and I was going to become not a prosecutor, sorry. I was going to become a defense criminal attorney. So I didn't go into that market. I'm now, I work with young children, whatever. And this is important to me because of this about the womb assassination. And now they shared about what happened to this young girl being, brutally raped and killed and murdered. Just for anybody, mother, that have to suffer through something like that. For anybody's, daughter, you send off to school. And then I just heard about some of the universities right here where I live at in the state of Delaware where some girls were, nobody ain't talking about it, but things have happened of girls being raped on campus, held hostage, raped on campus, gang raped, all of that. So it's happening around you. And you have to know what the government is going to do about our criminal system and about these illegals that's coming in here that are, criminals, hardcore criminals that they emptying out the dregs of their prisons and their jails and they sending them over here to the United States of America. And these people are from mental institutions and they from prison and jails and stuff, because they jails can't hold all those people. And like, for instance, we could bring up what happened with Shanquella Robinson. You know, what happened in 2023 to that young lady's life when she went across the borders into Mexico and was supposedly be safe with some friends and end up being brutally beaten and dead. And nobody couldn't find no answers to that. Nobody done anything about that. The United States. And guess what? Biden and Kamala were in office. They didn't care nothing about her life, nothing about the family, getting answers, or even having these people that did this to their daughter that was seen on a videotape beating her held accountable. So this is the woman you want to be in office? And you still want to be a Democrat if you cared about Shanquella Robinson? Even if she was over there with the fake friends or some shady stuff, she didn't deserve that, and her family didn't deserve that. And there was no justification for that. What happened to Shanquella? All those who's been fighting on the internet, trying to bring this awareness about what happened to Shanquella. They mentioned all these other girls that this stuff happened to, and there's so many, many others, but these are the ones that stand out. But what happened to Shanquella? What about whatever happened to her over there in Mexico? Cabo Los, Mexico. Let's not forget that. I mean, Los Cabos, Mexico. Sorry, I had a little messed up in my head. That poor young girl's life, the way she was brutally beaten, and only God knows what else could have happened to her that they didn't share with us. And her father cried his eyes out to the media. And her mother, she stayed calm. What can she do? You know, her daughter's gone. She know these people didn't care about her daughter's life. Her life didn't matter. And she weeps silently. Well, let's go on and finish this, and we can come back later and talk about these things.
In a matter of weeks, San Antonio is going to get its direct flight. So it is possible to do both. I would point out likewise, again, in recent weeks, another bill that I authored and passed into law is a bill expediting the building of 4 new bridges on our southern border across the Rio Grande River, 2 in Laredo, 1 in Eagle Pass, 1 in Brownsville. The Biden administration was putting bureaucratic roadblocks in place. I authored the legislation to streamline it, to speed up every one of those bills by several years. And the effect of that is going to be thousands of new jobs and billions of dollars of economic benefit for Texas farmers and ranchers and businesses and manufacturers.
No, she didn't deserve that,
So you can do both. You can stand up and fight the radical policies from the left, and at the same time you can pass meaningful pro-jobs legislation. Yes?
In that spirit, if Kamala Harris becomes president, how will she?
Well, look, I am happy to work with anyone, but I have every confidence if, God forbid, Kamala Harris becomes president, she will do as lousy a job as president as she has done as vice president. Simply ask yourself, she's been border czar. Good job, bad job. How would you rate the job Kamala Harris has done as border czar on a scale of 1 to 100? And if I were to rate it on a scale of 1 to 100,
0.
my answer would be negative 6,003. She has presided over the worst invasion of the United States of America in the history of our country. 11.5 million people, and it's deliberate. She wanted this to happen. Joe Biden wanted this to happen. And the reason, listen, I spoke to the Republican convention last week, and I said, this has happened cynically.
But even though I know she's not going to win, and I'm confident with that. I'm confident in saying that Kamala right now, the Democrats, they want to clown the United States of America. They just being goofy. They being just ignorant. They just trying. This is they way of showing us that they angry with America. They don't love America. They don't have no patriotism. They just here just collecting billions and billions of millions of dollars from American citizens, and they just stealing, 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 and they probably already may build their life over in some other foreign country, but it's all going to backfire because when you do wrong and you do evil and you think that there isn't a God that we know that is a living God, a God that we know that rules over all, and God sees you for everything you do, whether you do it in the sight of people or whether you try not to do it in the sight of people, it's going to be exposed, and you're going to get you're going to reap what you sow. You're going to reap what you sow. So she's not going to make it to that Oval Office, okay? She's not going to be the president of the United States. So people need to wake up, okay? And people need to trust God, turn their hearts to God, and you will see what's going to happen. God ain't going to allow it to happen because she's way out of order. And so is all the women who are right there toot hooping behind her, okay? She's not going to make it. And just like they plan to do an assassination on Trump's life, let me not say, God forbid, you reap what you sow. Your evil always seems to come back to you. It was a quote I put out there that says, take what you do as a loan because it's going to come back with interest. Take what you do as a loan because it's going to come back with interest. So the best thing to do is to get right, be right. Don't sit up there and lie in policies. Don't sit up there and lie to the people. Don't sit up there and steal from the people. Don't sit out here and say things are going great and people are suffering and dying and raped and all this other stuff is going on. And people are sneaking across our borders and getting into the United States. These criminals, these mental illness criminals, because you got different types of criminals. You got criminals that might go in the store and steal a bag of potato chips or say, I ain't paying for that. That could be crime. That's criminal because you stealing and you shouldn't be stealing because it's wrong, of course, and there should be some punishment behind that. But I'm talking about these criminals who feel what they do of killing, murder, and they love it, and it's in their heart and it's embedded in them, and they don't care about how they brutally rape and harm people, innocent people, young girls, and the innocent, and prey on innocent young women, and kill them and murder them and try to silence them, and they just had the pleasure of doing that. There is just some things that you have to really, really examine closely. That Kamala Harris got some mental stuff going on with her. If she didn't feel anything, what kind of person are you? That you don't even think that deep enough to know that you letting somebody into the country may not happen to you, but it's going to happen to somebody. That's why you got to be careful about not feeling anything in your heart for some things and then sitting up there lying about women wombs and stuff. Like, oh, she should have a choice. And then on top, and then put it in these ungodly laws. It ain't right and healthy for the same sex union to raise a family and to allow them to have the rights over a woman with a womb and a man and a woman that created and procreated together to that can't have children or whatever, that they want to have a child and they want to bring them up and pour into them the love of God and to raise them up with Christian values and give them a foundation that this should not be given honor to them. They shouldn't be given this because if they have Christian beliefs or whatever like that, this is something that they shouldn't have to put on the child. What kind of sickness is that? That ain't nothing but pure evil and demonic. Okay? Very demonic in their policy. So I just wanted the people that come to my chat and the people that watch my videos and those of you who've been listening to me and that's been supporting my channel. When I say support, subscribe to my channel and everything, to know these things. If you are in this demonic party and you don't know what you believing in, you don't know who you following or supporting. And I'm not saying Trump's no angel. He's not an angel. No, he's not. But so far, this man, Donald Trump, have more God in him that I can see than more evil. And they said, making the decision to vote for the two evils. And I said, well, I examined the both of them. And so far, Trump is on the righteous side of evil. He's on the righteous side. But Kamala and the rest, the Ben Biden and Harris government, policies and the Democrat Party are leaning way left. When you look at that scale and justice is blind and all that other stuff in the courthouse, and how you got to be able to see what side weighs more of the evil, and the side that weighs more of the evil is the left side. The left side. They don't honor God. And none of it's all about man decision, man laws. It has nothing, there's no God in there. And I try to look at everybody and I try to see everything fairly, but I don't see God in Kamala. I don't hear her lift up Jesus. I don't hear her talk of Jesus. But Trump and most of the people that so far on the Republican side have been God-fearing people. They're saying they're not perfect people. They're not probably all the way there as high in the depths of the Bible, but something is tugging there, something more spiritual of a divine, touch with God in their heart is there. Even while I'm saying I love Ted Cruz, he's talking from a pureness of the heart. And I feel his pureness and his love and his compassion and his caring for the people over there in the Harris County. And the protection over these people's lives and the safety of our government. Of our, not only government, but the protection over the citizens and voters and everything. Because the government is the people. And the stuff that Harris and evil Harris and evil Biden has been doing. And Biden, right now, we already seen what happened to Biden. How they cared about him anyway. These people supposed to have his back. If they knew long before 2024 that Biden was declining in his dementia, his aging of his brain was just deteriorating. And they knew this. They knew this way before it got to this point. So they don't need fooling themselves now. I just started seeing it, because I really never paid. Like I said, I'm just new to this. I just started this like maybe a week ago, and I'm learning out all these things. After the attempt on Donald Trump's life is when I took interest in listening to all of this stuff going on now with the election and with the campaigns running and everything, the candidates running. I didn't take interest in politics like this, but this something had to happen to draw my attention. And God had to tug at my heart and bring this to me. And I just had to bring this to talk about here on my channel. I'm about done with y'all now. So I just want to go on and finish this up. And then after this, I'm out. Okay.
Because Democrats wanted votes more than they cared about protecting our children. And I have to say, some in the media have clutched their pearls. How could you say such a thing? It is the only conclusion that is possible. Because if that's not right, lots of folks in the media have said, no. No Democrat wants the vote for these 11.5 million people. Okay, then why have they done this? Why have they opened up the border and allowed this invasion? And by the way, I would encourage you, if you spend any time in South Texas, I spend a lot of time in South Texas. I spend a lot of time in the Rio Grande Valley. South Texas is turning red rapidly. Why? Because you can't see this and defend this. South Texas has always been Democrat. But you can't see the dead bodies. Every day people are dying because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's open borders. You can't see the little girls and little boys being abused. I've looked in the eyes of children, one after the other, who have been assaulted repeatedly by human traffickers. You can't look in the eyes of women who've been repeatedly raped by human traffickers. You can't look in the eyes of grieving parents who've lost children to fentanyl overdoses. You can't defend it anymore. Kamala Harris has been in charge of it, and she deliberately produced this crisis. So sadly, if she is president, the only reasonable expectation is that this gets worse. That's why we've got to stand together to make sure she's not elected president. Yeah.
One more, last one. Senator, remember reporting the state's abortion ban is for their lives and futures and threaten their future fertility because they can't use the procedure in dangerous instances. What can you do as a senator to address that?
You know, the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision said that abortion is an issue. It is an issue that divides America. It is an issue that Americans have passionate beliefs, good faith, personal, emotional views, and strong disagreements. And what the Supreme Court said is under our Constitution, the way we resolve issues like that is through the democratic process. It is through the process of electing representatives in the state legislature and deciding on the laws. It is not by having 9 unelected judges in Washington, D.C. decree the rule for 330 million Americans across this country. And so the Supreme Court in Dobbs returned the issue to the democratic process. It was a victory for democracy. Now, what's the state of the law now? The state of the law now is that each state decides what are the rules that will govern abortion. In blue states, in states like California and New York, there are essentially no limits. In redder states, there are more meaningful restrictions. And the particular restrictions that are enacted, they vary state by state. Every state has a different answer to that. And those limitations reflect the values of the citizens of those states. I think that's the way our Constitution is meant to operate. I think that is democracy in action. And so the state legislature in Texas is going to determine what the rules are. I don't serve in the state legislature in Texas. And it's going to be the voters in Texas that are going to decide what the rules are. I believe we should protect human life. I think human life is precious. But I also believe that you should have to persuade your fellow citizens in order to enact rules. So in terms of, you asked about my role in the Senate, I'll say a couple of things. Number one, Colin Allred's views on abortion are truly radical. And they reflect the views of many of the congressional Democrats. Colin Allred supports unlimited abortion on demand up until the moment of birth. In the 8th month of pregnancy, in the 9th month of pregnancy, literally the day of labor, he supports abortion being permissible. With zero restrictions, no parental notification, no parental consent, and full taxpayer funding. Now, objectively speaking, that view, Colin Allred's view, is a radical view. Nationally, 9% of Americans agree with that. 91% of Americans disagree with that proposition. Even a majority of Americans who call themselves pro-choice say, okay, up until the moment of birth, that is too far. And by the way, when I say Colin Allred supports that, it is because he has voted for legislation that would strike down every single reasonable restriction on abortion in the country. That's what he has voted for. So you want to know the difference on abortion from him and me serving in the Senate. The difference is he would vote for legislation striking down every restriction in America and allowing abortion up until the moment of birth. I agree with the Supreme Court that it should be decided by the elected legislatures in each state, and that's the way it operates in Texas. All right, thank you, guys.
Okay, everyone. That is from Ted Cruz. Thank you, Ted. I appreciate you. God bless you. You answered it as best as you gave the people what they needed to hear. And, you opened up some people's mind to think and to make the right decision for themselves for this upcoming election for presidency. I don't know what else to say. He answered it all so clearly. Like, he left that up to the states. On the topic on the abortion, we everything is up to what it has to be up to. And I don't believe in womb assassination. I believe in pro-life, and I believe that if the child is a child from a aura, I think that child should be given to a good home with a family that can have their own children, and they want their own children, and they're going to do all their best to bring that child up and giving that child the love of God. The love of God. That's all I can say is the love of God that can be poured into his or her life, and they will grow up to be a great somebody to the world and to the nation. So that's all I can say, and be honored to their parents that have adopted them and was able to give them a good life. So that story got to come from a child who has been adopted by God fearing, good parents. I ain't talking about who came up with some crazy family with all kind of crazy stuff they brought you up. If it ain't got no God, they ain't give you no foundation in the Lord. I don't even want to hear your story. But if you were given a foundation in the Lord, and you want to be a testimony of the Lord and what the Lord can do, I can hear that story. But now, they just so crazy on adoption. That's my most important fight, is that what are these children that could have been aborted and their parents decided to give them up for an adoption? What about those babies that are born? Where should they go? Should they go in the hands of crazy people that want to do crazy stuff to their sexuality? Or do you want them to go into a God fearing home and being brought up with the values of a Christian and Christian beliefs and things of that nature? Those are the things that need to be challenged. That needs to be challenged. With that being said, your girl Casey McDaniel, I'm out. Peace.